If you signed a contract for a new construction home in Australia in the last 10 years, or you are about to sign one right now, there is a very real chance you are committing $700,000, $900,000, or well over $1 million to a product that was designed to look premium, photograph like luxury, and age far worse than you were promised. You were sold the great Australian dream. But in too many cases, what actually gets built on that block of land is a masterclass in cost-cutting hidden behind stone benchtops, tall ceilings, and glossy marketing. Today, I am going to show you how the Australian residential construction industry became a race to the bottom, who may be responsible when the cracks start showing, and the one non-negotiable rule that can save you from making the most expensive mistake of your entire life. I want you to think back to the first time you walked through a display village, and if you have not done it yet, imagine it clearly, because once you understand what that environment is doing to your brain, you will never see it the same way again. I have walked through many of them across Australia, from the expanding estates of Western Sydney to the outer corridors of Melbourne and southeast Queensland. And I will be honest, they are impressive. They are supposed to be impressive. The ceilings feel enormous. The kitchen island looks like something from a luxury magazine. The floors are spotless. The lighting is warm and flattering. The bathrooms feel like a boutique hotel. There is usually a friendly sales consultant offering you coffee, handing you a glossy brochure, and making the whole experience feel less like buying a product and more like stepping into your future. That is exactly the point. Display homes are not neutral examples of what your house will be. They are carefully staged retail environments designed to create emotion first and critical thinking second. Every visible finish is chosen to justify the headline price and make you imagine a better life. Premium benchtops, fancy tapware, oversized mirrors, expensive landscaping, designer furniture, soft music, scented air, perfect lighting. It is not just a house, it is a sales machine. And here is the part buyers learn too late. A huge amount of what you see in that display home is not included in the base price. Not the exact stone, not the exact windows, not the exact cabinetry, not the upgraded ceiling height, not the premium facade, not the landscaping, not the lighting package, not the upgraded insulation, and definitely not the level of finish you assume is standard. What often goes into your actual home is something the industry quietly calls builder grade. I want to slow down on that phrase because it sounds harmless and professional, but it can hide one of the most expensive misunderstandings in the Australian housing market. Builder grade does not mean high quality. It does not mean built for longevity. It does not mean premium. It usually means the lowest specification that still meets the minimum legal requirement, gets signed off, and allows the builder to move on. That is a completely different standard from built to last. A lot of buyers hear minimum standard and assume that means safe, durable, and sensible. But minimum standard only means it passes the code. It does not mean it will perform well in extreme heat, repeated storms, reactive soil conditions, poor drainage, or daily family life over the next 30 years. A house can meet the minimum legal standard and still become a maintenance nightmare. To understand how we got here, you have to understand who is building most new homes now. A few decades ago, a much larger share of residential construction was handled by smaller local builders. They built fewer homes each year, worked within their own communities, and relied heavily on word of mouth. Their name was tied directly to the houses they built. If a roof leaked or a slab cracked badly, people talked. Their reputation was on the line in the same suburb where the problem happened. That model still exists, but in many parts of the country, the volume end of the market is now dominated by large builders running high-speed production systems. They manage land packages, procurement, scheduling, subcontractor chains, finance milestones, and display village marketing at scale. Their competitive pressure is not just craftsmanship. It is speed, margin, throughput, and cost control. And that shift changes everything. When a business is trying to deliver large numbers of homes across multiple estates, every hidden component becomes a cost target. Anything you cannot easily see in a 5-minute inspection becomes a place to save money. Waterproofing, insulation, framing protection, ventilation, drainage details, duct layout, membrane thickness, flashing quality, fastener spacing. None of these things sell houses in a display suite. But every one of them matters more than the shiny splashback in the kitchen. This is why buyers so often confuse visual appeal with structural quality. The visible surfaces look good enough to create confidence. The hidden systems are where corners can be cut. Let us walk through the 5 major failure points where that decision can turn into a financial disaster. Failure point number 1 is the slab and the soil underneath it. Many newer homes are built on slab systems designed for speed and efficiency. One common method uses polystyrene void formers and a relatively thin concrete system to reduce material use and speed up construction. On the right site, designed properly, with the right engineering and drainage, this can perform adequately. But a lot of new estates are built on former paddocks with highly reactive clay soils. That is where the risk starts. Reactive clay expands when it gets wet and shrinks when it dries. In a country with brutal summer heat, heavy rainfall events, and inconsistent moisture around the perimeter of the house, that movement can become a serious issue. If site drainage is poor, if water ponds near the slab, if downpipes discharge badly, if cut and fill was not managed properly, or if the site classification was not matched by the construction response, movement can show up fast. And when movement starts, the slab is not the only thing affected. Cracks show up in brickwork. Internal walls split at the corners. Cornices separate. Tiles crack. Doors stop latching. Windows become difficult to open. In severe cases, the argument begins immediately over whether it is construction, drainage, maintenance, landscaping, soil moisture, or a combination of all of them. That is what makes this so dangerous. Once structural movement starts, proving responsibility can become slow, expensive, and deeply stressful. Failure point number 2 is the timber frame and the outer wall system. Modern build schedules are tight, and subcontractors are usually working across multiple sites at once. A framing crew gets the structure up. Then there may be delays before the roof is fully secure and the rest of the envelope is closed in. During that time, exposed timber can sit through intense sun, rain, humidity, and rapid temperature changes. Some exposure during construction is normal. The problem is prolonged exposure, repeated wetting, poor protection, and rushed follow-up work. If timber absorbs too much moisture and the structure is closed up before everything is properly dry and aligned, the consequences often show up later. Timber can twist, bow, shrink, or move as it dries. That movement transfers into plasterboard, cornices, skirting, and door frames. Buyers often see the result as cosmetic cracking, but repeated or widespread cracking can signal deeper movement and poor construction sequencing. At the same time, the outer wall system has its own risk points. Brick veneer homes rely on proper wall ties, spacing, drainage cavities, flashings, and weep holes to perform correctly. If these details are rushed or poorly executed, the home may still look fine at handover, but long-term performance can suffer badly. Failure point number 3 is waterproofing. This is one of the most common defect categories in modern housing, and it is easy to understand why. Waterproofing is absolutely critical, but once the tiles are on, most buyers will never see it again. That makes it a perfect place for hidden failure. Bathrooms, showers, balconies, laundries, and wet areas all rely on a waterproofing system that has to be applied correctly, at the right thickness, over the right substrate, with the right detailing at joints, corners, penetrations, and drains. It also has to cure properly. That last part matters more than people realize. When schedules get compressed, wet area preparation is often rushed. Dust may not be removed properly. Bond breakers may be missed or applied badly. Membranes may be too thin. Cure times may be shortened. Then the tiler arrives because the schedule says the tiler arrives, whether the membrane is truly ready or not. On handover day, everything looks perfect. The grout lines are clean, the tiles shine, the silicone looks neat. But grout is not the waterproofing system. Water gets through grout and tile joints over time. The real protection is behind the tile. If the membrane behind it is compromised, water can slowly track into flooring, wall framing, and adjacent rooms for years before the damage becomes visible. By the time a skirting board swells, a hallway smells musty, or a stain appears downstairs, the repair is no longer small. It can mean demolition back to the frame, drying the structure, rebuilding the substrate, redoing the membrane, retiling, repainting, and paying for temporary inconvenience on top of everything else. Failure point number 4 is thermal performance. Australia likes to talk about modern homes as if newer automatically means better. But in thermal comfort terms, many new homes perform far worse than buyers expect. On paper, they may meet the required rating. In reality, a lot of them are uncomfortable, expensive to heat and cool, and heavily dependent on mechanical systems to remain livable. The weak points are predictable. Large areas of ordinary aluminium-framed glazing, inadequate shading, poor orientation, gaps in insulation, compressed bats, untaped wraps, weak sealing around penetrations, poorly insulated roof spaces, dark roof colors with little attention to heat management, and almost no focus on true airtightness. The result is a house that may look modern, but behaves like an expensive tent. In winter, heat escapes too quickly. In summer, radiant heat pours through the roof and windows. Air conditioning runs longer. Bills rise. Some rooms are tolerable, others are unbearable. Moisture can build up in underventilated areas. Condensation becomes a hidden issue. And families wonder why a brand new house feels harder to live in than the older brick home they sold. Failure point number 5 is heating, cooling, and ducting. A lot of buyers assume that if a brand new home comes with ducted air conditioning, comfort is guaranteed. It is not. System sizing, duct design, zoning, return air, outlet placement, insulation quality, and roof space conditions all matter. If the unit is undersized, if the duct runs are long and poorly supported, if there are leaks at joints, or if the roof cavity becomes an oven in summer, performance falls apart quickly. Cheap, flexible ducting can sag, kink, split, or separate if installed poorly. Tape can fail in hot roof spaces. Air that should be cooling bedrooms ends up lost into the ceiling cavity. The unit then works harder to compensate, which means higher power bills, more wear, and a shorter service life. That is why so many owners of relatively new homes say the same thing. The system never really worked properly from the beginning. One room is freezing, another room never cools. The far end of the house is miserable. The energy bill is ridiculous, and by the time they start chasing answers, the original installer may be hard to trace. The builder may argue it meets minimum requirements, and the homeowner is left paying to redesign what should have been done properly in the first place. Now we get to the part that makes many buyers genuinely angry once they understand it. A lot of Australians assume that the inspection and warranty system fully protects them. They hear that a certifier or building surveyor signs off on stages. They hear there is statutory warranty coverage. They hear there are state regulators. Naturally, they assume someone independent is standing between them and a bad build. That assumption can be dangerously optimistic. In many cases, the certification and inspection framework does not work the way ordinary buyers imagine. The system varies by state. But across much of the market, there are long-standing concerns about conflicts of interest, limited inspection scope, variable quality of oversight, and buyers assuming far more is being checked than actually is. A stage sign-off is not the same thing as a deep quality assurance audit. It does not mean someone spent hours crawling through every cavity, measuring every critical detail, testing every membrane, checking every tie, or verifying every hidden component to the standard you would expect if it were their own family home. And the warranty language itself can create another trap. Buyers hear 7-year structural warranty and assume that means everything serious is covered and easy to claim. In reality, the arguments often begin over classification. Is it structural or cosmetic? Is it a defect or maintenance? Is it site drainage or owner landscaping? Is it settlement or structural movement? Is it installation failure or wear and tear? These disputes can drag on while the owner is still living in the house and still paying the mortgage. There is also the issue of corporate failure. When builders collapse, restructure, or disappear, owners can find themselves pushed into slow, complicated claims processes that are emotionally exhausting and financially draining. Even when legal pathways exist, they are rarely quick, simple, or painless. So what should you do if you want to avoid being trapped by this system? If you want the safest broad framework, there are 3 paths that make more sense than blindly trusting a large-scale display village promise. Option number 3 is to build new, but only with a genuinely independent, lower-volume custom builder with a strong local reputation and a limited number of annual starts. Not a company trying to push huge numbers of builds through a production line. A builder small enough that the owner is still accountable, still visible, and still directly tied to the quality of the result. Yes, the upfront quote may look higher. Yes, they may not have a giant display village, but the right small builder is selling supervision, care, sequencing, and accountability. Those are not glamorous line items, but they are worth more than most upgrades in a brochure. Option number 2 is to buy an existing home from the late 1990s to the early 2000s, provided it has been maintained well and inspected properly. This period is not perfect, but many homes from this era sit in a useful middle ground. They are modern enough to avoid some of the oldest service issues, but old enough for many hidden defects to have already revealed themselves. If the house is still standing straight, the wet areas are sound, the roof structure is healthy, and the maintenance history is decent, you may be buying something far more honest than a brand new build wrapped in marketing. Option number 1 is the unfashionable answer that many experienced buyers quietly respect the most. A solid, older brick home on a decent block, built well before the volume display village era. Not because every old house is perfect, they are not. Some need rewiring, some need replumbing, some need layout changes, but many were built with heavier materials, simpler systems, more repairable construction, and far fewer hidden builder-grade shortcuts. An older, solid home with good bones can often be improved gradually. A bad new build can drain your savings while still being hard to truly fix, because the original problems are embedded into the way it was designed and assembled. Now, if you ignore everything I have said and decide you still want to build with a volume builder, then listen very carefully, because this is the one rule that matters most. Do not rely only on the builder's inspection pathway. You must hire your own fully independent building inspector, and you must do it at the critical stages before the work gets covered up. Base stage, frame stage, pre-plaster stage, waterproofing stage, final handover. If the inspector finds missing details, rushed work, poor sealing, torn wraps, bad flashing, incomplete tie-downs, membrane issues, framing defects, or drainage risks, those items need to be documented immediately and raised before the next payment milestone moves forward. That money spent on independent inspections may be the highest return on investment in the entire building process. A few $1,000s spent at the right time can save tens of thousands or much more later. Because once the concrete is poured, the plaster is up, the tiles are laid, and the keys are in your hand, leverage disappears fast. That is the truth most display villages will never tell you. Builder grade often means built to pass, not built to age well. Built to satisfy minimums, not built for decades of comfort. Built to hand over, not built to protect your family from endless defect battles while you are still paying a 30-year mortgage. And that is why buyers need to stop being impressed by the wrong things. Do not confuse a stone benchtop with quality construction. Do not confuse a stylish facade with structural integrity. Do not confuse a staged display home with a durable product. Do not assume minimum compliance equals long-term performance. And do not assume someone else in the system is protecting your interests, because too often they are not. Check the builder's history. Check how many homes they start each year. Check whether the site sits on reactive soil. Ask what slab system is being used and why. Ask how the waterproofing will be inspected before it is covered. Ask how the roof space is ventilated. Ask what glazing and insulation are actually included in writing. Ask for everything and then ask again. Because the hard truth is simple. The display village is selling you a feeling. You are the one who has to live with the structure. If this saved you from a devastating financial mistake, subscribe now. Next week, I am exposing the hidden dangers inside Australian electrical switchboards and the cheap imported components that can turn a family home into a fire risk long before anybody sees a warning sign. It is one of the most overlooked dangers in modern housing, and every homeowner needs to understand it. I will talk to you soon.